Welcome everyone, Costini here with the discussion about Total War Warhammer 3, Shadows of Change, patch 4.0, and what is likely to be the most powerful AI faction in Immortal Empires, and it is of course Zhao Ming. Now, keep in mind that with patch 4.0, Creative Assembly has randomized the kind of benefits AI factions get, the major AI factions. They all get major benefits, but to the degree they get those benefits, and how their faction potential is affected, it is literally called faction potential by Creative Assembly, that is going to be randomized whenever you start the campaign. But even so, Zhao Ming's potential, when controlled by the AI, is of such a nature that even if, say, he ends up being ranked very low in terms of faction potential when you start a campaign, and Loki and Snitch get ranked really high, it's quite likely that he will end up in a fairly dominant position in Cathay regardless. Miao Ying may not appreciate that happening, however. She might get wiped out, but Zhao Ming may end up dominating Cathay regardless. Now, this isn't to say that Zhao Ming is the most powerful Cathay and Legendary Lord in the hands of the player. He is not. Nor is he the most powerful Legendary Lord in general. I think the Changeling would win that particular spot. But when it comes to the hands of in the hands of the AI, what makes an AI faction powerful are a number of factors. Auto-resolve being one of them. Now, auto-resolve is also affected by faction potential, so that RNG is going to matter. But auto-resolve of their race and the units in that race do matter. How many armies a race can have, the scalability of the economy. There's a reason why I wouldn't include, say, Wood Elves or Warriors of Chaos in any list I'm talking about the most powerful Legendary Lords, because while they're certainly very powerful, they do have limited armies. Cathay can maintain a lot of armies under the control of the AI. It got pretty ridiculous when I invaded the Cathay as the Changeling, and they just kept throwing army after army after army, like well over a dozen armies against me, without an end in sight, really. And even though I won, it got pretty ridiculous. And in every campaign in patch 4.0 that I've played, I've always seen Zhao Ming become fairly dominant. Even before 4.0, he was pretty strong in the hands of the AI. Keeping in mind that I'm making this video on the legendary difficulty. But Cathay was already fairly strong, both for Realms of Chaos and Immortal Empires. But now we're getting to a ridiculous level. Now, before I talk about the AI situation, the various benefits the AI gets, in particular Zhao Ming with this patch, I do need to talk about why Zhao Ming in particular. It comes down to one faction effect as well as one lord effect that does help him in a significant fashion. For the faction effect, the thing that really matters here is the plus 15 armor for melee units. That 15 armor for melee units means his Jade Warriors have 105 armor. If he gets the Dragon Scale research. Without that, it's 95. Now, 95 is still a ridiculous amount of armor. 105 is insanely good. And with that kind of level of armor, the AI, and also the player, get a significant benefit in terms of their auto-resolve potential. Now, Zhao Ming takes this even further because he also has Desert Armor as a Lord skill, which buffs the armor of melee units by an additional 10. And in terms of some lesser benefits, he gets 100% magic item drop chance, so his lords and heroes are far more likely to have items compared to other factions, and he also gets a minus 25% upkeep for melee units. The upkeep benefit he gets for melee units is going to end up mattering to a degree, but obviously it's not a faction benefit, so it's not quite as relevant. But still, there are a bunch of benefits for Zhao Ming when coupled together with the AI situation, especially in 4.0, coupled together with the Cathay changes that make him incredibly powerful in the hands of the AI. And I have to mention it, there are obviously powerful AI factions, like Greases can become potentially powerful if the faction potential stacks in his favor. Grimgore is, of course, quite very powerful potentially. The High Elves of Ulthuan, Tyrion in particular, can be quite powerful. But I think no other faction has the consistency of power in the same way that Zhao Ming has. So even if Zhao Ming rolls, I don't know, a 1 on the 1 to 20 scale on dice, in terms of faction potential, he's still going to be a fairly substantial threat. That Snitch and Lokir, who are the main challenges, the AI, we're obviously talking about the situation where the player isn't anywhere next to an AI faction, right? But even if Snitch and Lokir end up rolling like a 20 and Zhao Ming ends up rolling a 1 or a 5, Zhao Ming can still end up beating both of them. It might take him longer, it might be slower, but he will likely still be able to do it because of the way everything stacks up together between his faction effects, his Lord skill, Cathay, as well as the various AI benefits. Now, to understand exactly what's happening, we first need to talk about the AI benefits. There's a fellow by the name of Pitax who, when Realms of Chaos came out, he data mined the game to figure out what the difficulty settings are doing. So on Legendary difficulty, the AI gets the following very significant benefits. A lot of recruitment slots, global recruitment and local recruitment. It's +3 for local recruitment in each province. So that means the AI can recruit a bunch of units very, very quickly. But quite crucially, the AI gets an 80% construction cost reduction, a 60% recruitment cost reduction, and minus 50% upkeep. So 80%, 60%, 50%. As well as a bunch of growth, casualty replenishment. The AI gets 12% casualty replenishment on Legendary. I'm going to link the post in the description below. You can look over that. Now, these benefits might be higher with a high faction potential, but even if they're not higher necessarily, they're still incredibly potent benefits. And what he found out does match what we do have in the game. So if we look at Zhao Ming over here, who I'm allied in my Yan Bo campaign in Immortal Empires on turn 14, we can see that his Jade Warriors in his army cost him 43 upkeep. His Celestial Dragon Guard is 89. And this entire army is likely like 1,200 gold or something along those lines. But either way, a ridiculously low amount, with only himself, his hero, the Longmud Riders, and the Fire Rain Rockets costing any significant amount. That is effectively it. Might be closer to 2,000 actually, but still a very low cost for such an army. That is with his minus 25% upkeep benefit. But it's not just the 25% upkeep benefit, by the way, because there's all other benefits for Cathay as well that will stack up. And that's where the crux of the issue comes in. Because Cathay has a bunch of benefits that can stack on top of the AI benefits. And that's where it gets a bit crazy. Now, to the extent that the AI will use these benefits, that is a different discussion. But here's some of the benefits the AI can get its hands on. It can get the Sword Master Ancillary, and this is probably going to be fairly common for any AI faction, any Cathay AI faction. This is minus 8% upkeep for Jade Warriors and Jade Warriors with Halberds. So that 50% upkeep is transformed into a 58% upkeep benefit for Cathay factions, assuming they have that ancillary. Then in the research tree, we have the Grace of Kuai Yin and the Rite of Yang. An additional 10% upkeep benefit, assuming the AI is going to get the research. To the extent that the AI researches useful things like that, that is a different matter. Also, a 5% construction cost for provincial capital settlement buildings. That's on top of the 80% that the AI already has, so 85% cost reduction. Now, this is available for every Cathay faction, and it was available before the patch, though obviously a lot of the research at top, research at the bottom did affect your yang balance. What I would argue, however, is more important for Cathay is the change to Harmony. So, looking at Harmony, if we look at Yin, and you got to understand that the AI is not necessarily going to go to the extremes of 6 plus Yin or 6 plus Yang. So, but if we look at Zhao Ming's prompts over here, he has 2 Yang. 2 Yang, if we're looking at it, 1 to 2 Yang gives him a recruitment cost benefit of minus 10%, recruit rank of +1, and 1 local recruitment capacity. That's on top of the 60% recruit cost reduction that AI has. So you're looking at a 70% recruitment cost for local recruitment slot capacity with 1 Yang and the free that AI has on Legendary, and +1 recruit rank. And that's assuming the AI doesn't go to something like Yang free, where it's 20%. So you're looking at 80% recruitment cost, +2 recruit rank, and still 1 local recruit capacity. Which, by the way, is something that can be fairly doable for the AI, though not necessarily so. And that's just the Yang benefit. The Yin benefit, which the AI might go for at 1 to 2, is a 5% construction cost, but 10 growth, 1 control. Growth might be significant, but 5%, 85%. Just that's for all buildings. 90% for provincial capital buildings if the AI is getting alchemic mortar over here. You end up with a 90% construction cost reduction just between the legendary AI benefits as well as research and yin potentially. And if we're looking at the situation over here, I think the AI is far more likely to go with Yang. At least the experience I've had so far in the campaigns I've played, I've seen the AI go far more for Yang. And that might be important because that recruitment cost reduction of 10% is arguably more important for them than the construction cost benefit, because they already can get buildings very quickly. But being able to produce a lot of armies very cheaply and quicker is arguably a bigger benefit. Even worse, though, if the AI was potentially able to balance harmony in their provinces, because that would give them a plus 15% economic benefit and a minus 15% upkeep for armies in the province. That would mean that the armies in provinces with balanced harmony would have a 65% upkeep reduction. Now, the AI seems to be bad at building harmony, but here's the thing. When the AI takes over a province, when it's conquering territory, it's quite likely that they won't necessarily have any structures in that province to begin with, or if they have structures, they might not have affect yin or yang. So when a Cathayan AI faction ends up going into hostile territory, they just might not have anything that affects a yin or yang. It's possible, not necessarily not necessarily likely. Depends on the factions they're dealing with. But if a Cathayan AI faction gets harmony, perfect harmony, then that can give them a significant advantage. So that is what makes Cathayan AI in general quite very potent with patch 4.0. Because beforehand, while certainly many of these benefits were taken from perfect harmony that exists from the harmony system that existed before, the AI was really bad at getting perfect harmony, balanced harmony, and imbalanced harmony was actually creating issues for them. It could affect them in terms of their income potentially, and it was something that I was just bad at balancing out. You could tell that based on whether or not they had the Ancestral Warriors army ability, and the AI very rarely managed it. The AI was bad at handling harmony. Harmony was a hassle for a player, let alone what the AI was dealing with. So it ended up being a limiting factor, but now the AI can benefit. Either they go yin or yang, or they get balanced harmony. It doesn't matter. They get the benefit either way. Okay, so that's Cathay in general. But what makes Zhao Ming stronger in the hands of the AI as opposed to Yanbo or Miao Ying? Well, Miao Ying has a problem in that the Great Bastion, like assuming there's no player control faction in this entire area, the Great Bastion might collapse, might fall, and you might have, and Miao Ying is the one that's going to have to pick up the pieces and deal with the situation. She also doesn't have that armor benefit that Zhao Ming has, because that obviously affects Auto-Resolve in a major way. But it comes down to starting position and how in the campaign dynamic. So Zhao Ming starts right next to Hanyu Port. He'll take it on turn 1 under the control of AI, regardless of the difficulty you're playing on. So he'll have 2 settlements from turn 1, no doubt about that. Now, that's not unique, but he then will march over here very quickly in the Warp Zone Desert, annihilate the Dissenters, deal with the Skaven, get to entire provinces. And then he's in a prime position to take over the entirety of the Celestial Riverlands. The Jade Custodians over here are quite likely to fall under his control, Confederation-wise, because he has vision on them. Unlike Miao Ying, he actually gets vision very quickly on them, seeing as he starts right next to them, and they do start with Shangwu. And the vampire faction that controls most of the Celestial Riverlands, they're going to fairly quickly fall to either the Jade Custodians or the Burning Nomads. The Burning Wind Nomads. But then the Jade Custodians come under a significant amount of pressure because of Snitch and Lokir. They fall on the defensive. They're more likely to confederate. The AI confederation ability is improved. Guess who's the biggest beneficiary of all of it? Zhao Ming. So you end up in a situation where this AI faction ends up in control of 3 entire provinces. Fairly safe provinces at that. Because just because he's confederating the Jade Custodians doesn't mean he's necessarily going to end up in a war with Lokir as quickly as possible. In fact, Lokir might end up in a war with the Celestial Loyalists and Miao Ying. Same with Snitch. So Miao Ying ends up fighting Snitch. She may win, she may not win. She's unlikely to drive out Snitch. They're going to weaken each other. Same with Lokir. He's going to weaken the Celestial Loyalists. He's got the vampires to deal with. He's got Nakai to deal with. Basically, in this entire situation in Cathay, Zhao Ming is the only one that doesn't have a major threat, especially a major threat that could threaten his core territories. Gorst is to the west, but Gorst doesn't care about dealing with Zhao Ming. He's got Kugaf and Greases to deal with, and potentially Drazif later down the line, or rather the Ogres of Pigbarter. So Zhao Ming ends up taking a larger number of provinces than any other faction in this area unopposed, and he'll always do this when under the control of the AI. And what happens after that depends on the dynamics of the campaign, the RNG, etc. But in virtually every campaign, I've seen Zhao Ming just end up taking control over this entire portion of the campaign map, with potentially Miao Ying taking portions of the Forest of the Moon or splitting it between them. And once that's done, Zhao Ming is in such a position where he has like 4, 5, 6 provinces. He's got significant economic benefits, upkeep benefits, auto-resolve benefits. He has no major opponent to stop him once Lokir and Snitch are finished. Village is not capable of taking out Cathay on his own. Zaytan, nor is Zaytan, certainly not when Zaytan likely ends up in a war with Grimgor. So he ends up being unopposed with a good chunk of territory, and he can do whatever he wants. That's when he gets completely out of control. Obviously, the key to dealing with him is to kill him as quickly as possible, but unless you're playing Gorst, that's not necessarily an easy task either. I mean, if you're playing Snitch, you could try and rush him, though Miao Ying is going to come in from your backside and strike at your capital even, so you got to be worried about that. But like, even if you're playing Lokir and Snitch, that's not necessarily an easy task. And if you're playing any other faction, like, the only one who could really potentially do it would be Gorst if he was willing to ignore Kugaf, Greasus, and the Pigbarter Ogres, all of which, by the way, might very well declare war on him. Nakai can't do it. He's too far away. Lokir has other issues. Snitch has other issues. Like, if you're playing a campaign as Snitch, it is a far better situation to ignore Zhao Ming, even if he's going to be a pain in the long term. Take the north, open the Great Bastion Village, try an ally village, secure the situation in the north, and deal with Zhao Ming. It is a harsh fight, though. It is the biggest challenge you'll encounter in a campaign as Snitch. And that was before patch 4.0, I might add. With patch 4.0, with the change to Harmony system, it ends up being far harder to deal with all of this. And that's what makes Zhao Ming the most powerful AI faction. It's the fact that he has a guarantee that he'll always become powerful to a certain extent. And it's very rare to see him losing to Lokir. To Snitch, absolutely not. To Lokir and Village and Snitch combined, maybe, but it is a pretty tall order for them to overcome the hordes of Cathay. Because Cathay, again, the Cathayan armies have better auto-resolve situation. The casualty replenishment that all factions get on Legendary means that the poor casualty replenishment Cathay has is relevant. And Zhao Ming has a better economy, more potential, and more potential than either of them do. He can also recruit a lot of units very, very cheaply. This is one of the things that really benefits Cathay and has always benefited Cathay, is the fact it's not just like how good the units are in isolation, it's also the fact Cathayan units are cheap. That's the thing. Like, Jade Warriors are an extraordinarily good tier 1 unit. I think they're the best tier 1 unit in the game. They have 80 armor. 80 by default. And you recruit them. The price of recruitment of these guys is absurd in a particular campaign. If I can find a particular recruitment location for these guys, assuming I have any. Might be... Nope. Yeah, I've been busy in this campaign. So if we look at Jade Warriors, they cost 500 to recruit. Keep in mind, that's for the player, not for the AI. 500 for the player. I'm sure you guys can do the math. Now, sure, that recruitment cost reduction, but it's like Black Ark Corsairs can beat these guys, but Black Ark Corsairs are not as cost efficient. And the Dark Elves can't get as many recruitment slots, don't have access to global recruitment, which Cathay does. That's one of the limiting factors for the Dark Elves. They don't have global recruitment, they have Black Ark recruitment. A fairly limiting factor. That's one of the things that does hurt low-tier under the control of the AI, and I think all the AI Dark Elven factions, that lack of global recruitment, because the AI gets a lot of global recruitment slots. I think it's 6. So not having that affects him. But what about Snitch? I mean, surely Skaven can recruit a lot of units. Yes, they can, but the problem is Skaven units just don't do well in auto-resolve, and in an AI to AI battle, the fact Cathay has units with better auto-resolve potential does matter. Also, Snitch is in a particular vulnerable position early on in his campaign, unless he takes a lot of this territory, because his economy early on depends on controlling Sinpo and having the gem mineshaft over here. And also taking Kunlan. Snitch's economy can be severely nerfed by just losing Sinpo, and it's the most vulnerable settlement, and it's the closest one to Zhao Ming, and hell, even Miaoyan can just roll through this gap over here and take it. And if Snitch loses that, and he hasn't established a proper provincial capital with a reactor in Kunlan, then he ends up losing. Like, he'll throw a lot of armies at the problem, but just, again, that auto-resolve situation working against him. That's all I had to say. Questine here, signing out. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and enable notifications, and stay tuned for more.